Devonta Smith is out, Brock Purdy is out, and Daniel Jones has been officially exiled into obscurity. This is exactly why we wait till the end of the week to run through every single matchup to find the must-start and sit wide receivers in the particular week of fantasy. So please go down there and drop a like on this video and subscribe to the channel to show your support, because I'm the only fantasy YouTuber working on a Saturday to get you this content right here. So our first matchup, the Tennessee Titans at the Houston Texans this week, and I think that Nico Collins is obviously the only must-start here. You know, last week it's just so crazy that if he had not been called back on that 80-yard touchdown because Laramie Tunsil was downfield, we'd be talking about Nico Collins like he's the number one wide receiver again. Well, I never left. I think he is the number one wide receiver, even better than Jamar Chase in certain weeks. So I think that Nico Collins is absolutely must start against Tennessee, who is actually kind of ironically good against wide receivers, but I don't think it matters because Nico Collins is going to rip them apart. And then with Calvin Ridley, I think he's the best flex option right here. Obviously, kind of came back down to earth last week for us, and so he still kind of remains a little bit boomer bust, but his floor has been actually a little bit higher than it actually was at the beginning of the year because their quarterback play is so bad. But obviously, since they moved on from DeAndre Hopkins, he's the guy that they always throw to. It's nobody else. Tyler Boyd's irrelevant. Nick Westbrook-Akine is sort of flexible. He's a lower-end option, sort of in the range of somebody like a Dontavian Wicks maybe, because he can get the big play, but he's not definitely for sure going to get the big play against a stout Texans defense. And I think Tank Dell is probably the second best flex option in this matchup. In this particularly tough matchup versus wide receivers, Tank Dell is just a little disappointing. A little bit better maybe with Nico Collins now that he's not the number one, but ultimately I would just stay away from Tank Dell and Nick Westbrook-Akine unless you have like middle to low end options that you're debating in your head. The Minnesota Vikings at the Chicago Bears. That's our next matchup, and Justin Jefferson remains a must start. You know, it's been pointed out on my channel, on my wide receiver rankings, that Justin Jefferson's been kind of low key, like bad, but it's not like he's been bad, right? I think that's a very important distinction to make. He has not been bad in fantasy football. It's just been disappointing because of what his ceiling typically is. He's not hitting it, and right now, Sam Darnold is not playing his best football, and the Bears are top 2 versus wide receivers in fantasy football. So it gives people concern. Ultimately, guys, just understand, Justin Jefferson's elite. At any point, he can go off. He just hasn't had a touchdown in like the last month and a half. He can get that any game, so I'm never going to sit Justin Jefferson, and I'll never advise you to do something like that. And then we've got kind of a collection of flexible guys. DJ Moore has kind of separated himself. It looked like last week that there was kind of more scheme design plays specifically for DJ Moore, which is exactly what should have been happening all freaking year. Shane Waldron, he's a disgrace. That guy's just a joker. He's a total choke artist. Nobody likes him, and he was not beating DJ Moore. And that's a problem. That's why he's been exiled. So with DJ Moore, I think he definitely is the best flexible guy in this territory. More of a high-end flex, though. And then with Jordan Addison, Roman Dunze, and Keenan, I think they're kind of all in the same tier. Jordan Addison, obviously taking on the stout Bears defense, still remains a big play threat. And then with Rome and Keenan, Keenan's first of all questionable in this game, may not play. I'd say Rome is probably a slightly better option than Keenan, even if Keenan does play. I just think that with Rome Odunze, he's still young. He's obviously not hitting well with Caleb Williams weekly, so it's ultimately just lower tier flex options is how I look at these three guys. The Dallas Cowboys at the Washington Commanders here. CeeDee Lamb, Terry McLaurin, they're must starts. Terry McLaurin is going to be fine. Just don't overreact too much to last week. He's been really, really good consistently all year. He gets a great matchup this week. CeeDee Lamb, I think, has emerged back into must-start territory. I think CeeDee Lamb, last week, it's so clear that he's so clearly their number one guy. They cannot afford to lose CeeDee Lamb. So to me, I think CeeDee Lamb is absolutely a must-start because he started making more plays, and Cooper Rush looked like he may have been, developing a little bit more chemistry with CeeDee Lamb. And then it's so crazy. You can't play Jalen Tolbert, obviously, because of Cooper Rush, and I think people understand that. What's been crazy is, people have been, asking me, can I play Noah Brown? And it's Noah Brown, I didn't think I really had to talk about him because he was just, the beneficiary of a lucky Hail Mary several weeks ago. Ever since then, he's done nothing. This is a wide receiver. This is a one wide receiver offense right here. It's Terry McLaurin. Reminds me of the Pittsburgh Steelers with George Pickens. You play Terry, you play CeeDee, you don't play any other wide receivers in these either two offenses. The New England Patriots at the Miami Dolphins this week. Tyreek is must start, honestly, only because several guys have been ruled out, right? Like Brock Purdy, who we'll get to in a little bit, makes Juwan Jennings not a must start. Devonta Smith, who we'll talk about later, he's been ruled out. So it's like you kind of have to play Tyreek Hill most of the time. And I would say it's a good matchup to do it for. And I do think that Tua will particularly play really well. So I'd say Tyreek is a must start. Demario Douglas, I think, is the best flex option. Like, he's actually been kind of close to hitting really good games of fantasy, and he's clearly their wide receiver one. The only problem this week is that he's taken on Jalen Ramsey. That matchup I don't particularly love. But Jalen Waddle, like, I'd rather play Demario Douglas over Jalen Waddle any day. Waddle has been horrendous in fantasy. It's not like he's missed time. Like, he's been bad all year with Tua and without Tua. It's been horrific. So you cannot play, you can, but Jalen Waddle, understand, like him and Kayshon Boutte, honestly very much in a similar tier. They're both lower flex options. Kayshon Boutte potentially for a big play, and since he's not got the Jalen Ramsey matchup, I think it's playable. Honestly, maybe just as playable as Jalen Waddle is. The Kansas City Chiefs at the Carolina Panthers. Nobody's must start here. DeAndre Hopkins outside of that Tampa Bay game has been really disappointing in this Kansas City offense, man. It's been really disappointing, and, you know, he's not even playing like 60% of the snaps. Like, they're taking him off on a lot of different formations, man. So I just don't think he's on the field enough to give you enough. And I think that they're going to run it down the Panthers' throat. So I don't think they're going to throw that much anyways. I think he's the best flex option of the bunch. But honestly, like Adam Thielen and Xavier Legette, they're not that far behind. Thielen is obviously still questionable, so you have to monitor this one throughout the rest of the day today. But honestly, like the Kansas City Chiefs, I expect them to beat the Panthers pretty good in this game. And so I think the Panthers will be trailing, and Adam Thielen's their target guy at this point. Used to be Deontay, it's now Adam Thielen if he plays. Legette, obviously big play upside. That's all you can really hope for with him. And then Worthy is in the same boat. And I would say Legette is the better play because he's more consistently involved in the offense than Worthy is. And Jalen Coker is already questionable, but with Adam Thielen probably coming back, I would just say to stay away from him. The Tampa Bay Buccaneers at the New York Giants this week. If Mike Evans plays, you fire him up. And they're expecting him to play. From everything I've read, the Buccaneers are expecting him to be back. So I think that you could just, confidently put him in your lineup. Giants defense is, it's so funny. Giants defense is not bad. It's really not. What makes them look bad is being on the field all day because their offense can't sustain drives. That's what makes them look bad. So, without, obviously, no more Daniel Jones, he's been exiled into obscurity. Now they've got Tommy Cutlets at quarterback. I just think that the Bucs should be able to take advantage of the Giants, and that defense will crumble a little bit, and that's where Mike Evans comes in to be a really good play. Must start for sure if he plays. Malik Neighbors, Wan'Dale Robinson, honestly, I think they're both relatively close to each other. Tommy DeVito in this game, I don't know what to expect, to be honest with you. He actually did have some moments last year, so maybe he can connect with Malik Neighbors, but I've been saying this for weeks. Malik Neighbors, over the last 4 or 5 games, has been bad in fantasy football. Almost unplayably bad. It's been really bad. So maybe this is what he needs to get a reactivation, but he's already questionable in this game after he missed Friday's practice. So he may not end up even playing in this game. So monitor that one. But honestly, if he plays, I think Wan'Dale's right there with him. I think Wan'Dale's going to get a bunch of targets in this game. Tampa Bay's defense is beatable, especially the secondary. So I do think that there's opportunities here if Tommy Cutlets can deliver the ball. It's all going to come down to that, but I think that Wan'Dale actually has a lot of opportunities in this one. And then Darius Slayton, you can't play him. Jalen McMillan and Sterling Shepard, I just want to note 2 things with these guys. On Jalen McMillan, maybe he goes back to being a deep threat. I think he could potentially become a big play, dart throw at a flex. I'm not doing it this week. And then Sterling Shepard, curious to see how many targets he gets this week with Mike Evans back. The Detroit Lions at the Indianapolis Colts. Obviously, Amon-Ra St. Brown's must start. We don't need to talk about it. Josh Downs is the best flex, but Jameson's not that far off. With Josh Downs, it's obviously because of the fact that he's still their number one. Regardless of if it was Anthony Richardson or Joe Flacco, he's been the consistent number one. So just the amount of targets that he gets on a weekly basis, and it has been able to hit with Anthony Richardson. I do think that he's still the best flex option in this group. But Jameson, like, as far as consistently doing it goes, he's very consistently hitting big plays. And that's the funny thing, is because he doesn't get that much volume, but the big plays are kind of hitting at a pretty consistent level. So I think he's very, very playable just based on that. I would still consider him a more high to mid-end flex option, but definitely still playable. And then Alec Pierce. Alec Pierce is definitely playable because he gets deep targets every week. And Anthony Richardson, kind of over the year, has been able to connect with him. So I do think Alec Pierce is sort of a lower-end Jameson Williams play. Not as consistent, but the big plays are there. And I'm not playing either Adonai Mitchell for obvious reasons or Michael Pittman. Pittman with Anthony Richardson this year, low ceiling. It's kind of like DJ Moore with Caleb Williams, except I don't see a lot of hope in sight. They're using Jones more. Like, they're just doing that. So I don't think that Pittman is really much playable with Anthony Richardson. The Denver Broncos at the Las Vegas Raiders this week. Courtland Sutton, call them a must start. I think he's going to be a fantastic play this week. The Raiders are obviously, they're like 5th against wide receivers in fantasy. You want to know why? Because you can run all over them. Well, the Broncos don't exactly have the most consistent run game. I think Sutton's going to have a really good game in this one. I'm playing him for sure. Jacoby Myers, mid-end option because he will get targets, but I hate the matchup. Obviously, he's taking on Pat Surtain. That's not good. Not a good matchup I want to take advantage of particularly. So ultimately, I would say not my favorite option, and I'd kind of want to stray away from him if I had the opportunity to do so. But definitely based on target share, he will be a playable option. And then DJ Turner, Aaron Trey Tucker, not playing either of those guys. The Arizona Cardinals at the Seattle Seahawks this week. DK, JSN, fire them up. DK Metcalf, Jackson Smith-Njigba. First of all, the Cardinals defense I've talked about, actually I really like them in fantasy. But there is a reality here, and it's not bad, but it is a reality. The Cardinals are more of a bend but don't break defense. That's why that, the wide receivers actually have a pretty favorable matchup going up against the Cardinals. I think they're like 22nd or 23rd versus wide receivers in fantasy. They bend, they don't break a ton. So DK and JSN should both get a lot of targets, and DK's got the big play upside. JSN's going to get peppered with targets. I think it's very, very consistent, and we've kind of found the consistency in that Seattle offense between the 3 wide receivers. JSN's clearly the number 2/number 1 some weeks in targets, and DK is obviously the alpha of the group and still the big play threat. Either way, both of them are must starts. Marvin Harrison Jr., high-end flex option. I'm not trying to, I've been getting labeled as a Marvin hater lately. Guys, on my Dynasty channel, Dynasty Fanalysts, go check it out because I'm on there all offseason. I was championing and trumpeting Marvin Harrison Jr.'s name all offseason. I love this guy. He has been disappointing this year. Big time. Inconsistent. Effort looks inconsistent. Sometimes he's just not targeted that much. So I don't think he's a must-start player. Seattle's defense is definitely beatable, which I like it for, but Marvin Harrison Jr., I'm not comfortable putting him in must-start territory right now. He needs to show more. Michael Wilson, I'm not playing him. And Tyler Lockett, I'm not playing him for reasons I laid out with the Seattle Seahawks wide receiver group. The San Francisco 49ers at the Green Bay Packers. Everything changed when Brock Purdy was ruled out. Brock Purdy ruled out in this game. It is really puts a damper on San Francisco options. Now, obviously, this flex group right here is so big. Jaden Reed is my favorite. I think he's just kind of the most consistent Packers receiver and definitely has the big play upside. Christian Watson, these 3 guys, Watson, Jennings, and Debo, I wrestled with for a while, trying to figure out which one I preferred. I ultimately settled on Watson, then Jennings, then Debo. Watson because of the fact that he has Jordan Love. The big play upside is there. He's got his quarterback. Juwan Jennings and Debo don't. Juwan Jennings and Debo very, very much in this. You could honestly interchange these guys. I think Debo, there's a case to be made that he probably gets more opportunities on the ground this week. I think that's a very strong case to be made. On the other hand, I think Juwan Jennings is the best wide receiver in that group right now. So I still prefer Jennings just a little bit. And I do think that Debo is playable still, but neither one of these guys are high-end options this week. And then Romeo Doubs, I would say, is definitely the least likely that I would personally play. Romeo Doubs, it still is important to note. He has had a bad stretch here over the last month, But what is important to note is that he is one of the top 2 route runners consistently for Green Bay. Him and Jaden Reed. They're consistently running the most amount of routes in this offense. So he is going to have a good week at some point. I just don't know when that will be. But until then, he's always going to be a playable option. And I'm not playing Ricky Pearsall because of the goose egg and because of no Brock Purdy. And I'm not playing Dontavian Wicks either. The Philadelphia Eagles at the Los Angeles Rams, our Sunday night game. Looking forward to this one, even though Devonta Smith is not there. He was ruled out of this game, which honestly just makes me like A.J. Brown more. I already really liked him in this matchup, but I think A.J. Brown could go freaking nuclear this week. I think it's very, very possible he goes absolutely nuts on this game. So A.J. Brown, you obviously never sit him anyways, but I think that the potential that he gets a massive game is really, really high. Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, as I've been saying, they have not separated from me. They are both getting targeted. One of them, Puka, is getting targeted a little bit more, but Cooper Kupp is getting the red zone opportunities more. He's more efficient with his targets. They're both must starts. They're both great options. And I've been asked a little bit like Puka's matchup. Do I have concerns with it? Not particularly, even though Quinyon Mitchell has done really well for the Philadelphia Eagles. I'm ultimately just not that concerned about this matchup right here for Puka Nacua. And then Demarcus Robinson is kind of in that Alec Pierce tier where it's like you could sort of play him if you're in that like middle to low end flex territory where you just are trying to take a deep shot. There's potential here that he hits on a flex, on a touchdown, and it's a flexible play. Devonta Smith, like I said, out. Jahan Dotson, this guy, like, what a fall from grace. Like, he was never, I guess, like, in super high graces, but, like, Jahan Dotson, like, he is not that good. So, he had opportunities with and without Devonta Smith, A.J. Brown, and he never did anything. So I just think he's disgraceful. You can't play him. I'll tell you what's not disgraceful, though, is this Matt Stafford projection on Underdog this week. It's 0.5 total yards. That is not disgraceful. That's very graceful, because when you hit the higher on this one, you're winning free money as a new customer, basically. So if you want to take advantage of it, go down in the comments and grab the link that's there, and use code FFN to sign up for Underdog. When you hit that higher on the sweat-free projection for Matt Stafford this week, they'll match your first deposit 50% up to $1,000 in bonus cash. Now going to our Monday night game, the Baltimore Ravens at the Los Angeles Chargers. I think that there's no must starts. Zay was very close, and I do think that Zay is a great play. I think he's a very high-end flex option. Ultimately, I'm so confused on where this game's going to go. I think it could be either a shootout. I think it could be also a slugfest, because the Ravens, obviously, their run defense is great, but their pass defense is horrid. It's horrible. So I just can't imagine that, Ladd McConkey and Quentin Johnston are not going to be good plays. I called Quentin Johnston a must start this week, and obviously, Ladd's a must start too, but I just don't, there's something holding me back from this one. Obviously, Ladd is still dealing with injury, so you have to watch for that one, and so is Rashad Bateman. But at the same time, it's like, man, this game, it could go one of two ways. I'm leaning towards playing all three of these options, maybe Rashad Bateman, but ultimately, I'm leaning towards playing all Zay Flowers, Ladd McConkey, and Quentin Johnston. But ultimately, I just want to make this clear. There's a possibility that this game becomes a slugfest. It's the hardball. These brothers want to show who's tougher. It's a ballsy matchup. This is kind of like Steelers-Ravens last week. I think it could have a similar outcome, but I also think it could be a shootout as well. So take your pick. I like these options, though, but I'm not playing Joshua Palmer and Deontay Johnson. I'm waiting until he does anything for the Ravens. So let me know how your lineup looks this week, and if you want to see where all these wide receivers ranked in my top 30 this week, click on this video right here.